الحمد لله أحمد الله على نعمه بجميع محامده وأثني عليه في بادئ الأمر وعائده وأشكره على وافر عطائه ورافده وأعترف بلطفه في مصادر التوفيق وموارده وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدًا عبده ورسوله شهادة بقلائد الإخلاص وفرائده متحلية وأصلي على رسوله جامع نوافر الإيمان وشواهده ورافع أعلام الإسلام ومطالبه وشارع نهج الهدى بقاصده وهادي سبيل الحق وماهده وعلى آله وأصحابه حماة معالم الدين ومعاهده ورادة مشرعه السائر بوالده أما بعد فأوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. قال تعالى: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. Respected brothers and sisters, a couple of weeks ago I was in another city where I work, and I came to know about an incident where a 90-year-old man slipped while going down the stairs. The stairway was very narrow and the situation was serious, and not anyone would have been able to help due to the risk of injury and also the circumstances of that man. Thereupon, his wife, around 70 years old, his wife rushed out of the house seeking help. The first passerby she found happened to be a physiotherapist. He was on his way to teach, and he was trained to deal with these situations. So alhamdulillah, he was able to help. Now this reminded me of a concept from Christian theology called the principle of providential proximity. It means, according to those scholars who coined this term and this principle, it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us next to the people Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to help. There are cases where just because you are the sort of person you are, and the person you are with is the sort of person he is or she is, you are able to help him or her, or she is able to help you. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts me next to the person I am supposed to help is very evident in the Quran. So let me take you through a short journey into some Quranic narratives where I think, wallahu a'lam, this principle is being developed in the Quran at different levels. Perhaps it is in conversation with the parable of the Good Samaritan in the Gospel of Luke. The story of Musa alayhi salam in Madian is a good example. In Surah Al-Qasas, verses 23 and 24, we read, وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً مِنَ النَّاسِ يَسْقُونَ. When he came to the waters of Madian, he found a group of men, and they were drawing water, perhaps for their flocks. وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمْ امْرَأَتَيْنِ تَذُودَانِ. And he found, apart from them, two women holding back their flocks. قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا. He asked them, what is your business, or what is the issue, or what is happening with you. قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير. They said, we may not draw water until the shepherds drive off, and our father is old, وأبونا شيخ كبير. So Musa عليه السلام drew water for them. فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل. He drew water for them, and then he turned away to the shade. فقال ربي إني بما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. And he said, Oh my Lord, surely I have need of whatever good you have sent down on me. The kindness of Musa alayhi salam, who was very tired by that time, as we know from some reports, which of course we cannot verify. The kindness of Musa alayhi salam has no self-interest behind it, no motive of friendship or kinship. He happened to be in the right place at the right time. So he felt the urge and the responsibility to help those two women. Interestingly, in a verse in the same chapter, in the same surah, in the same narrative, the narrative of Musa alayhi salam, verse 20 in Surah Al-Qasas, we read, وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْعَى قَالَ يَا مُوسَى إِنَّ الْمَلَأَ يَأْتَمِرُونَ بِكَ لِيَقْتُلُوكَ. A man came from the furthest part of the city, from the outskirts of the city, and he was running, يَسْعَى. He said, Musa, Moses, the council are conspiring to slay you, to kill you. Depart, فَخْرُجْ إِنِّي لَكَ مِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. I am one of your sincere advisors. He was a stranger. And the Quran, although the Quran is a very brief book, the Quran underlines that he came min aqsa al-Madina, from the furthest part of the city. He came from the outskirts of the town, of the city, I don't know. And it is remarkable that this happens just before Musa alayhi salam departs to Madian, where he then helps the two women. So an act of grace towards Musa alayhi salam triggers another act of providence from Musa alayhi salam towards those women, as if it is a cycle. In fact, the Quran hints vaguely, Wallahu a'lam, at this idea of the enchainment of evil or good, that there is a cycle. In Surah Al-Tawbah, verse 98, and in Surah Al-Fath, verse 6, we find a doublet, a phrase that is repeated exactly in the same words. عليهم دائرة السوء. عليهم دائرة السوء. Now, عليهم دائرة السوء is not very easy to translate into English. But the late A.J. Arbery, who was the chair of Arabic here in Cambridge in 1947, and he was based in Pembroke, in his translation of the Quran, he translates as follows: عليهم دائرة السوء, the turns of fortune. So we have here this idea of a chain, of a string of gracious acts. Indeed, much earlier in the life of Musa alayhi salam, we find that Pharaoh's wife, maybe her name is Asiya, Allahu a'lam, that Pharaoh's wife intervened to protect Musa alayhi salam. In Surah Al-Qasas, she says, قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ لَا تَقْتُلُوا عَسَىٰ أَن يَنفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا. قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ. He will be a comfort to me and to you. Do not kill him. He may be of benefit to us. Now, Asiya, or Pharaoh's wife, was very wise, and she knew the keys to Pharaoh's heart. Here she invoked two things. She invoked the idea of love, قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ, And perhaps she knew that Pharaoh loves her and that he will never say no to her. And that is why, according to Al-Alusi in his Tafsir al-Ma'ani, she started by saying, قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي, he is a comfort to me, or he will be a comfort to me, just to convince Pharaoh. And then she used this idea of utility. He will be of benefit to us. A similar idea of providential proximity is at the very heart of the opening narrative of Surah Yasin. We read in verse 20 of Surah Yasin, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ. A man came from the furthest part of the city running. He said, my people follow the envoys or follow the messengers or the prophets. Now here the Quran uses the device of fronting and delay, what is known as taqdeem wa ta'khir. And the Quran here says, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ. Whereas in Surah Al-Qasas, the Quran says, وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَة. Now, Allahu A'lam, but perhaps the Quran here is focusing more on the fact that this man came from the furthest part of the city. This fronting might have the function of emphasis. In like manner, we all know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam in verse 10 in Surah Yusuf, one of Joseph's brothers. We don't know his name. He is named in the Bible. The Quran is silent. قال قائل منهم لا تقتلوه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه قال قائل منهم لا تقتلوا يوسف وألقوه في غيابة الجب يلتقطه بعض السيارة إن كنتم فاعلين. قال قائل منهم لا تقتلوا يوسف. One of them said, no, do not kill Joseph, but cast him into the bottom of the pit, and some traveler will pick him out if you are going to do so. So again, we find this idea of providential proximity, doing what you can do. I hope that I have been able to show how this principle of providential proximity is represented in the Quran. Now, what are the benefits of this notion? I hope some have already become evident. And what are some of its implications? I will reflect on these questions very briefly in the second khutbah, inshallah. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فأوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Respected brothers and sisters, the principle of providential proximity, which I have tried to establish Quranically, is helpful in overcoming the despair that comes from seeing the scale of the world's need compared with our very limited resources. There is always something that we can do to those around us, unique to each one of us, and according to our abilities and resources. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. This brings more hope and perhaps relieves us of grief. The second point is that it is not simply obvious whom we should help. It takes discernment, as Allah's decrees usually do. It is likely to be the most improbable person around, so our openness to help has to be all-encompassing, all-embracing. We need to have our hearts keenly attuned to where there is need. We must discern by paying careful attention. What are the needs to which we are actually responding? I am reminded here of verse 273 of Surah Al-Baqarah. This verse speaks about charity, speaks about the poor, And then it describes those poor people in the following words. It says, يحسبهم أو يحسبهم الجاهل أغنياء من التعفف تعرفهم بسيماهم. The ignorant person supposes them rich, i.e. thinks that those poor are rich. The ignorant person, al-jahil, supposes them rich because of their ta'affuf, because of their abstinence, because of their restraint. So the Quran, or this verse, is describing those who are unable to identify the needy as ignorant. By implication, wallahu a'lam, the message of the verse is clear. We should go and look for the needy. We need them more than they need us. Third, this principle and the relevant Quranic verses which I touched upon in the khutbah, I merely scratched the surface. This principle and the relevant Quranic verses also raise questions on the level of moral theory. Is our duty to aid affected by physical distance? All things being equal, is the obligation to help a person who is nearer to us stronger than the obligation to help someone who is far away? How do we define moral proximity? This is not the place, of course, to discuss these questions, but I think that these verses prompt us to think about these issues. Finally, this theme is all about reaching out, building bridges, listening to the cries of help. In Surah Al-Tawbah, the Prophet ﷺ is described by the hypocrites as huwa udhun. Literally, he is an ear, or he listens a lot. Now, this is actually one of the virtues of the Prophet ﷺ. Ironically, it was put in the mouth of the hypocrites. But here, the Quran is teaching us this notion of listening, and the Prophet ﷺ was always open to listen. We honor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whenever we honor another human being, whenever we understand the value of dignity, the value of life, the value of peace, and the value of love. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله